All right, well, here we go. A little late, but better late than never. Thank God for these cordless mics. I love them. So now I can sit up front of the boat when I'm at the dock here, when I'm by myself. Nothing better to do but this. And I put the camera up on the dash looking forward into the inlet. So who knows what you might see. I'll just let her rip while I sit in here and share some voices. So today, Chippy caught his very first fish ever all by himself. I rigged up a little jig on the end of his little rod that he got from Walmart, little kid's rod. Threw it down to the bottom. And then I was doing something. I heard Sarah yelling, "Oh my God, oh my God." And I'm like, "What? He's got one." And she looked over and his rod was getting jerked down into the water in his hands. So that was pretty exciting. And then what else? I'm going to show you guys a video right now. I'm going to let it rip through from what we saw. So we're at the dock. Chippy and Sarah, they went back. I'm by myself now, but we're at the dock, and all of a sudden, it sounded like all hell was breaking loose in the water underneath the dock. So we look over, and here's this gang of otters going to battle, like ruthless, nasty, violent battle. It was crazy. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. So I whipped out my Canon R7 camera and whipped over there and had videotaped it. So I'll let this play right now. Check it out and check out how ruthless they are. Like whatever was going on, they were meaning business.
There's a big one too. There's a mommy one and baby one. Something back. Look.
Well, it looks like there's a showering out there. I don't know if you can see it through the windshield of the boat, but I can see it out the back door. It's definitely showering. But anyway, here we go. Let's get into it. What do we got? This next email is titled Algonquin Experience, Ontario. Hey Steve, please do not use my name. All right, I got you. I'm from a small town called Erin in Ontario, Canada. I spent many nights camping in the interior of Algonquin Park, but this time was different from all the rest. I drove nearly 7 hours to reach the Cedar Lake put in towards the top of the park, and from there my plan was to take 3 days paddling up the Nipissing River and camp on a beautiful spring-fed lake called Whiskey Jack for 3 days, leaving me 1 day to canoe downstream back to Cedar Lake. Everything was going smoothly. Since it was the first week of June, the bugs were horrendous, but the trout fishing was great. I smashed all the portages and made it upstream with little to no difficulty. And once I reached the last portage before Whiskey Jack, I took a quick break, ate a Cliff Bar, then loaded my pack, paddles, and food drum for the first trip. then doubled back for the canoe. When I got back to the canoe, I saw a person crouching down on the sandbank of my last switchback before the portage, about 25 meters away. They were wearing what looked like a black bear hide in their body, which was strange because it was nearly 30 degrees Celsius, and who the hell wears something like that in the first place? I knew it couldn't have been a black bear because of the way it was crouched like a human. So I said, "What the F?" But quietly, because at this point I'm still under the impression that this thing is a person, and I didn't want to be rude. Then it looks over at me, still crouched down. Then it looks over at me, still crouched down, with a confused but stern facial expression. I quickly jerked my head back in amazement that this wasn't a human, but something I'd never seen before. And when I jerked my head back, it quickly turned its head away and looked back at the river. I made the connection that it was probably a Sasquatch about 5 seconds after I realized it wasn't a human. Even though I believed in them, I have believed in them for a while now, seeing one was really confusing for me. I turned around slowly, picked up my canoe, and walked away saying things like, "What the F, that didn't just happen. No way that happened. Holy shit, they are real. Oh my God." I never felt threatened, or that I was in any danger at all during my time camped on Whiskey Jack. Dead standing firewood was everywhere. I caught 3 huge brook trout each night for dinner. There were less bugs than on the river, and I found 2 handfuls of morel mushrooms, and it didn't rain once. And each night I had an extremely deep sleep and woke up the next day feeling like a brand new man. I'm thinking they blessed me in some way, or accepted me in their territory. I plan to return to that exact spot next spring, but perhaps with a friend this time, so at least someone will believe me. Cheers, brother. I believe you, man. I've been there. Welcome to the club. We're in the same club. Didn't ask for it. Here we are. That's pretty cool. Who else do we got here? I'm surprised not more people. I just talked to a friend of mine, firefighter in Western British Columbia, and he went on a month-long canoe track back east there somewhere by himself solo. I'm going to have to sit down with him and pick his brain and see if he might have heard something odd, seen something odd on that trip. Total adventure he went on solo. Amazing adventure. This email is titled My Story. Excuse me. Steve. So this is my encounter. This happened in Southern Oregon in 1977. And I was 14 years old, and we lived very rural. And our property backed up to BLM land, so I had a lot of room to run. I was constantly in the woods hunting or on the river fishing. And in the winter, I ran a trap line for extra money. And I thought that I knew every animal in the woods. We had seen the Gimlin film when it came out. My parents told me that it was not real, so I never gave it another thought until that summer day. I was riding my horse up behind the house, and he started to act up and was snorting and trying to take off. And I was concentrating on getting him under control. He kept looking up the hill, so I looked up the hill, and about 50 yards away was an 8-foot-tall Bigfoot sitting on a stump watching me, and it scared the hell out of me. He had reddish-brown hair all over him. And needless to say, I took off on the horse. I had to go about 6 miles out of my way not to go back the way I came. I told a couple people over the years, and they all scoffed at my story. I continued to travel and hunt those mountains and had never seen any more of them. I've heard him scream and growl at night. There have been rumors of other people seeing tracks and seeing him. And this sighting scared the living shit out of me. I am a veteran and worked in the woods as a logger, so I think I am pretty tough. I have never been this scared in my life. I appreciate what you're doing for the people like me. All the best, Russ. Russ, what I'm doing for people is exactly what you just did for the people through me. So appreciate you, man. Appreciate your time and your honesty. And you are tough. It's endless. It's endless. Truth is endless, though, right? Truth is endless. Here's another one. Life on the Other Side of the Globe is the title of this email. Dear Steve, you may use my first name, Mark, if you wish. And firstly, thank you for what you do to help others through this avenue. I guess even you are a little astounded by the number of people who have something to say on this subject. And a little background about myself. I am a 64-year-old who has spent a lot of my life working with the less fortunate and criminally afflicted and the mentally impaired, both as a prison officer and later as a police officer here in New Zealand. I've been in a number of situations that could have taken my life. And I have been blessed, I guess, as I have even survived being run over by a stock truck while riding my motorcycle. Yes, I've seen that light, and I know the peace that comes with knowing you're probably going to die. I can't say with a hand on heart that my sixth sense has served me well to date. However, unfortunately, I also have had the premonition about others in danger on a number of occasions. All but one ended safely. That one took me a long time to get over. I was an avid outdoors person when in my youth, but after having a couple of bad experiences, I no longer spend time in the bush or our wilderness. My experience of something strange in the bush was in 1976. 4 of us went to the local ranges for a few days hunting, either deer or pigs, as both are relatively plentiful. We stayed in a hut overnight, and that's when the weirdness started. We became aware of someone moving around in the bush. We all had the feeling of being observed. We headed out before daylight and walked about 4 to 7 kilometers up and down the various ridges. We came to a scree slope leading down to a valley with a small stream. Going down the scree slope were large, deep footprints. The stride was the thing that got me. I'm 6'2" and 220 pounds, and I was barely able to make as deep as an indent, but was easily 2 feet short on the stride. They led down and across the stream. On the other side of the stream was a flat area full of waist-high rushes surrounded by thick bush. And as we looked around, we discovered an area where the rushes had been turned into a bivouac, and it stank. And the rushes had been plated together as to hold them as some form of cover. We became aware of being watched, and one of the parties started to become quite paranoid. The rest of us felt really uncomfortable and decided we needed to leave. When we finally got to where our 4-wheel drive was parked, about 1 kilometer from the hut, it had greasy marks on the windows where something had looked through. Unfortunately, we never spoke again about our experience and never went back to that particular area. There were other times in different hunting locations when I would get that overwhelming feeling of being watched. I put most down to other hunters. And on one occasion, I became aware of being watched and decided to drop down into the bush and just wait it out. And after half an hour of nothing, myself and my hunting mate stood up, and as we did, a shot whistled over the top of us. And needless to say, we bush bashed down and out of that location rather quickly. Moving forward to 2001, I was in an area of about 15 to 20 kilometers from the previous. They share the same set of ranges. This area is used for water collection for the surrounding cities. And I was walking a well-used track where lots of people picnic and camp. And I became aware that there were no birds. And my sixth sense was telling me something was completely wrong about being there. I decided to turn around and head back. And as I did so, that feeling of you're not alone became overwhelming. I decided to turn and look back behind me, and what I saw shocked me to my core. There was a large, dark shape about 10 feet away, and the shape was at least 7 feet tall, and it was as if it was cloaked, as I could not make out any real features. My only thought was flee. I turned away, but was momentarily frozen to the spot, and it took me all my effort to walk away without running like a fool. I've said nothing about this to anyone for a number of years until a friend moved into a lifestyle block about 5 kilometers from this park. And he told me he had seen something standing in the trees a couple of times, and his dog wanted nothing to do with it. He also mentioned that his dog would often refuse to go up a particular track that leads toward the water reticulation area. There have been a couple of accounts in recent times of dogmen from a valley nearby to this location. The Maori, in their oral histories, speak of a creature called the mohau, a hairy man who was in the bush. And this creature was said to shy away from man, but was not to be messed with. We had a number of reports over the years of sightings, but all have been treated with skepticism. But here in New Zealand, we have people go missing in our outdoors regularly. Many are never found, but on occasion, something turns up. We also have those who just disappear. And I think Dave is correct. There's some kind of entity out there we don't understand that is involved in this. Something that has bothered me is that a succession of governments have bombarded our native bush and ranges with 1080 poison pellets under the umbrella of possum eradication and bird life protection. This poison has killed everything in its reign. The waterways from the forests are contaminated, and it's killing deer, pigs, goats, bird life, and cattle. It won't be long before it kills some poor soul unaware of its presence. I live on the edge of a regional park on the border of a city, and there was a 1080 drop about 5 years ago. Before it, we had plentiful bird life. After, we had little to none. It's only recently that they have returned in numbers. As for other things, life has taught me a lot. There are things in this world we know nothing about. I've seen beings that look human, but are pure evil. They do not like to be crossed. The following account happened in 1998 while I was a serving police officer. I had one tell me once he wanted to attack me, but I was being protected by something. And he was a young man who was being treated for a form of psychosis, but in reality he was possessed. He had been brought in to appear in court, as they needed to be committed for long-term care. And I was able to talk to him and calm him down, but something told me he was not being completely open, so I challenged him to show himself. And this young man's face darkened, and a voice, not his, came out of him. I think I started to say a prayer, and he backed off, muttering all sorts of obscenities. He basically collapsed on the floor, and the young man was back, and he said he felt so tired. The mental health staff could not believe it when I communicated with what was in him, but they certainly sought some religious assistance as well after the event. I have a feeling he passed away not long after. That shit freaks me out. I don't like that stuff. I don't like movies that entertain that topic. For some weird reason, I just do not like any of that shit myself. And as I see it, we have only just begun to understand the planet that we inhabit. There is much yet to be rationalized. And I believe there are portals, too, other dimensions everywhere. These portals open and close. What leaves and enters these portals, I do not know. And I also believe that some have such a love and or horror from a moment that when they pass, they repeat that moment as a form of spirit or apparition. And not long after moving into our new home that had been built in a new housing area, I, along with 3 others, saw a girl in a Victorian dress walk past a window 12 to 15 feet off the ground. We all asked each other, "Did you just see that?" The site where this happened had been a small hillock and picnic spot that was bulldozed to put in housing. On other occasions, I've seen not only shadow people, but also full-form entities in that same location. Others have also seen things appear and disappear here. My dogs will often bark and snarl at nothing, especially during the night. I've also had family visiting say they have seen something. As for me, I'm not bothered by it, it does not give me a feeling of harm, but sometimes more a feeling of calm. Sorry for the long rambling email, but in 64 years, these things and more have made me come to the conclusion we know nothing of our world. One thing I am sure of is that we are monsters of our own destiny, and to arrive at a safe place, we need to be totally aware. I also know that power corrupts, and many in politics remain there purely for that power over others. Ultimate control. Keep an open mind. Don't get caught up in anything that in any way takes your individuality away from you, and question everything that your gut tells you is not right. Well, this is an older one because it says, may 2021 be our year of truth. Yours, Mark. I don't know if you said use your first and last name, Mark, or any name. Oh, you can use my first name. Gotcha. There you go. I don't think I read that before, Mark, but I appreciate it, man. Sorry it took a while to get to it. And I have heard from other law enforcement officers from New Zealand, in particularly the South Island, who have had similar sightings. I actually love the South Island myself. Excuse me, and I remember seeing the 1080 signs posted all over the place when we were hunting. It's sad, isn't it? This next email is titled, No Bullshit Lights and a Beast, 2018. Hi, Steve. My name is Andrew. I have a surprisingly strange, especially to me, story. And I really hope you put it out there about one of my long-term stays in Michigan's Manistee National Forest. Might have read this. I've camped out from summer to late fall in 2 spots while working in hillbilly machine shops, saving money for a good camper, which I have now after 3 years of hardship. I hate living with human animals, so I prefer the wild ones until winter. Okay, so last year in late September, I was in a chair by a small fire on the edge of a bowl/depression with pines and regular trees surrounding it. I was on probably my 8th or 9th beer at 1 or so in the morning when I saw 2 brilliant colored lights to the north of me, approximately 200 yards in the pines. Oh shit, I said, maybe it's the DNR or police. I've been camping there for months, which technically is illegal. I grabbed my Marlin 22 bolt action with a 4-power Bushnell scope on it for an optic. I always have a gun while camping or hiking. And I went 20 or 30 feet towards it, just past the cabin tent, and looked through the scope. Finger off trigger, of course, and holy shit. These lights were much higher than people would ever hold a light. I went up further, another 50 yards using no light, looked again through the scope, and what the F? They were at and in the lower levels of branches in these very tall 65-year-old red pines. Again, 2 high-intensity, brilliant blue and white lights. I realized at this point they were not beams of light or lanterns. They were the elusive orbs that me, myself, have seen on shows and questioned. My nerves at the moment were starting to rattle. But I said, what the hell? You have to get up there another 75 yards to get a better look. I then dashed up out of the section I was in, over the seldom-used dead-end 2-track, right there and into that section of pines, about 50 yards, and something told me, stop, this is far enough. I took a knee, looked again, and they were a little further back in now, but I was the closest I'd been. I looked again, and could now see that one was bigger than the other, but the color spectrum of the bluish-white light emitting from them was amazing. I was pretty freaked out at this point, and my senses said, go back and get the hell out of here for tonight. So I did, even leaving my small fire burning. I knew it'd be fine. I got in my truck, and I went a couple miles away, and I slept in it. I was not on drugs, and I did not hallucinate when drinking. So there is the light part of it. And after that, I was actually proud of myself for moving up on them and observing, regardless of my hair standing up and nerves saying you better not. And now to the best part. A couple weeks later, I was in my cabin tent, 10 foot by 15 foot. At right around 10:30 p.m., it was a cloudy and very slightly moonlit night with light wind. I was laying on my third air mattress of the year. Comfortable, but crap. Watching YouTube on low volume so I could stay aware of my surroundings. And when to the end of the tent where my feet were, I heard something walk with incredible weight on the pine needles. I sat up instantly. I heard another couple steps, and now every hair is standing up. My adrenaline is through the roof. And I quickly grabbed my Marlin again, and I put my extra magazine in a plastic tote where I could grab if needed, and opened my knife and left it next to it. Did that stuff within 1 second probably. Then it came closer yet. I jumped up and it kept walking from my foot end towards the door, and at this point I heard what sounded like a giant bodybuilder strongman or fat man walking with his huge inner thighs rubbing those synthetic running pants together, but hard. Every step this thing took sounded like incredible weight was behind them. I was going to open fire through the tent, but I knew I had to call out first in case it was a human, so I did and yelled out, "You better declare yourself right now, MFer, or you're getting lit up." I was about to have a nervous breakdown at this point and thought I might pass out, but felt if I did, I might well die. And after I yelled out, I just stood there ready to shoot. It's just 22, I know, but I'm a master with it. I stood there for about 30 seconds, stunned really by what I just heard, and the incredible weight of those slow steps. And I, of course, then grabbed my flashlight and started looking out the windows, only to find nothing. I searched the entire area the next day, only to find nothing at all, no bear sign in the whole area. In truth, that was the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. And I've been in the Army infantry as well. Not deployed, but a lot of room clearing and the whole 9 training. Lastly, as I stood in my tent that night, I called out. Lastly, as I stood in my tent that night, as I called out, at 6'4", 185 pounds, I never felt smaller or more vulnerable in my life. Senses told me it was a huge beast. So there it is, my crazy summer 2018. And lastly, I know now the Indians used to say, never to follow those lights for far, or you will become missing. So I'm glad I didn't. And a question for you, Steve, is I have limited experience with some bear. If that was a bear, do they sound like a huge person with sweatpants rubbing when walking on 2 legs? I know they do a lot. There's some big ones around, but damn, this really sounded enormous. Thanks for sharing my Night of the Nights and the Beast story. And if you do, sorry. Thanks for sharing my Night of the Lights and Beast story, if you do. Best regards. I got it, man. Shared. Was it a bear? No, it wasn't. Can you hear a bear walking? Can you hear a bear's legs rubbing on itself as it walks? Negative. I've been really, really close to walking bears, and I can answer that with absolute confidence. No, they don't. Appreciate that email, man. Welcome to the club. One more. We'll call her a night. The day Bigfoot became real to me. The title of this email. My name is Jacob. I've been hunting in Virginia for over 30 years. Mostly deer and turkeys with the occasional bear. Well, it was just a few years ago I decided to take a buddy with me on a deer hunt. I slipped into a bottom where I had positioned a pop-up ground blind a few weeks prior to this hunt. I stationed my buddy just over the ridge behind me, about 150 yards in a tree stand. And I slipped into the blind quiet as a mouse, about 2 hours before daylight. And as I sat there, I began to feel as if something was watching me, and a really uneasy feeling that I've never felt before. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was only about 20 minutes before legal shooting hours. And as the minutes ticked by, the light began to turn the open areas gray, but the thicker areas were black. I heard a whoop to my right down in the holler. I'd never heard a sound like that, and it was loud as shit. I readied my rifle, and that's when all hell broke loose. This thing completely lost its shit. It twisted 8-inch holly trees off and slapped the ground with them while whooping at me like an effing silverback gorilla. I pointed the rifle and clicked the safety off. Still couldn't see it. It effing roared at me, and ran on 2 legs out of the thicket onto the side of the ridge, exactly 46 yards from me. I couldn't see the details of its face, but only the giant black outline. I was trying to find it in my scope, but it was a cheap scope, and it was just too dark. I stopped on the hill 46 yards from me. It stopped on the hill 46 yards from me and roared at me again. It felt like my ribs vibrated, and I swear I was shitting my pants at this point. If I could have found it in the scope, I would have dumped the damn thing. I turned and ran up the bottom, jumped 2 fences, and it roared again. It had covered about 400 yards in about 10 seconds. And as soon as the sun came up, hold on a minute. It turned, and ran up the bottom, jumped 2 fences, and roared again. It had covered about 400 yards in about 10 seconds. And as soon as the sun came up, I collected my buddy and got the hell out of there. It took me a couple of weeks to pump my balls up enough to go back in daylight with a couple of buddies to pull my trail cameras and check the scene out. It had broken the top off of every holly tree in that bottom for over a half a mile to a huge swamp. Another thing that happened was that there was no deer activity. I went from getting 300 pictures a week to only 1 deer that looked as if it had been hit by a car. It was as if they had just all left. I told my buddies, and all but 2 laughed at me. And needless to say, they're pretty much the only 2 buddies I have now. When you've suffered for the truth, being called a liar is about the worst thing you can be called. Yeah, kind of sucks, doesn't it? But you'll get over it. You will. You won't mind them any attention, man. I'll tell you what, and all you people listening, when people laugh at you at this stage of the game, who gives a shit? You know, I've been telling everybody for years, the moment you don't give a shit what anybody thinks is the moment you are a free human being. So please try to get there. I loved it. When I got there, life just started getting real fun, and it hasn't stopped. The moment you free yourself of that ridiculous mind space. Especially today. Could you imagine? Well, I get it, but it's just hard for me because I like to encourage people nonstop. It's like, come on, seriously. Why worry about what a human being thinks today? Wow. But anyway, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate your email. You're helping people yourself. Every single person that writes in helps somebody. Guaranteed. As well as himself, right? But anyway, I gotta find some food. Well, I got food in the boat. I'm gonna eat some food. Go to bed early. I'm gonna try to get up real early. And I think I'm going to try and do my first attempt at live feed fishing tomorrow. So there you go. Pre-warn. That'll probably start at around 6 something in the morning Pacific time, I guess, if everything goes well. And if not, well, I don't know, we'll see. But keep looking, maybe glance at the channel periodically tomorrow morning, because, well, you know me, once I say I'm going to do something, I eventually get it done, somehow anyway. Oh, on that note, saying I'm going to get something done, I still haven't spoke on the phone with the kind man who was going to tell us about that video that he took with his phone of those 5 beings. But I will. He traveled to the coast and went fishing the day I talked to him. And we were going to talk the next day. I'd imagine he was pretty tired. And you know what I've been doing the next few days after. But haven't forgot. I'll give him a ring once I get a chance and see what kind of free time he's got. We'll mesh it up, and I'll get a little conversation with him anyways, and get some questions answered about exactly what he saw with that video, and where everybody went, what direction they were going, and why. Were they trying to get away from the sight of people? Did they see him? What did they do? You know, all sorts of innocent questions. So there you go. Hopefully, I'm going to see everybody live tomorrow on the back of this boat. And who knows, maybe I'll even catch a great big salmon. We'll see. Share my story at howtohunt.com. Get it shared. I'll be back later.